All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a live stream of the Aging Together podcast, season 4, sponsored by Heart Mobility, revolutionizing those steel metal gray grab bars from the 1960s with their newest product, Safety Grip. If you're tuning in live, please use the chat to introduce yourselves and ask any questions along the way. Our guest today will answer them at the end of the show. Today's guest is Jaelyn Vickery, also known as Jay. Jay is a certified financial therapist specializing in helping others build their wealth with wellness. Through her company, Dimensional Wealth LLC, and her podcast, Finance Fitness Finesse, she educates and empowers individuals to break free from compulsive spending, consumption cycles, and financial stress. With a background in eating disorder therapy, consumerism psychology, and lifestyle fitness, Jay leads others to reclaim their time and live intentionally. Jay, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on the show. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. So let's start with a little bit more about you. It's been a while since we last chatted, and you've been busy building. So, what's your story and journey into how you got into this industry? What sparked your passion? And, what is your why? How has that evolved over time?
I appreciate this question. And yes, I've been very excited for this time together so that we could catch up and just bring the good word and witness to your audience. So, a little bit about my background. As Dr. Pooja Patel mentioned, I am Jay, and I have a background in clinical psychology and social work. In pursuit of my career, my degrees, I actually worked in banking for about a year and a half. And it was during my time working in banking, interacting with people of all different backgrounds and demographics, that I realized I was really good at de-escalating intense money conversations. And it was from that point where I was like, okay, there's something about this money and emotions thing and behavioral finance that I got really intrigued by. And the rest is history. Ever since working in banking and finishing out my mental health degrees, and now working in the field as a financial therapist, I love helping others understand that money is emotions disguised as numbers, and human beings are a species that has to consume to survive. Yet we live in a culture and a society where overconsumption is often pushed more than what our actual needs are. And so I'm just really interested in not only I'm one of those therapists that went into the field to learn about how I operate, because who doesn't want to seek understanding in regards to why they operate the way they do? And now I just pay that time forward and helping other people build that superpower of self-awareness.
I really appreciate you saying how we're so ingrained with overconsumption in our society today. I was just talking to a friend yesterday about this, where we're like, we have more than we could ever need, and yet we keep buying stuff, right? And it's because we can, and it's because it's there, and it's available. So that's really interesting. I'm excited to hear more of the emotional side of this, which will be part of what our topic is today, that we can jump right into, which is the 7 dimensions of wellness, which you introduced me to, and you use that to kind of guide your practice today. So what are they? What are the 7 dimensions of wellness, and what do they mean?
Yeah, great question. So the dimensions of wellness, I also call them the dimensions of wealth, which is aligned with my business name, Dimensional Wealth. Because I've just seen time and time again with the clients I work with, whether it's directly in the field or even family and friends in my community, where we're all on this pursuit to reach financial stability, financial freedom. But in the chase, in the hustle for that money, we actually lose other very important parts of ourselves and other very important parts of our wealth, which are our health, our relationships, our emotional and intellectual health, things like that. So the dimensions of wealth, the dimensions of wellness, the acronym that I have trademarked for it is 5 reps. Okay, so 5 reps stands for the dimensions of wellness. And I'll go ahead and list out what the acronym 5 reps means. So it's financial, intellectual, vocational, emotional, relational, environmental, physical, and spiritual. And I created the 5 reps acronym mainly because in my time educating others about this, I was actually on a interview with the local news station in the town that I live in. And this was about 2 years ago. And I remember they asked me what the dimensions were. And this was like right at the birth of, my business. And I'm like, okay, I need to figure out a way to remember the dimensions because they're a lot. Like having, in fact, it's some places have 5 dimensions, some have 7. 5 reps is actually 8 dimensions in total. And the way I created that acronym because I wanted a way to not only remember the dimensions when I was educating others about, to also find empowerment in an acronym that we could all move forward with. So 5, the number 5, is one of the only numbers that is indivisible by itself. Just as human beings, we can only really divide ourselves. We're going to have a ton of external impact, but it's the way in which we allow ourselves to absorb any sort of external influences rather than absorb it that impacts our ability in pursuit of wealth. Um, and also, sometimes when I've educated my audience about the dimensions of wealth, my clients are like, "Oh my gosh, Jay, like that's a lot to manage." And I'm like, "Yeah, life is like you are not a one-dimensional person. So don't place yourself into one box, one check mark that you are just this one thing when you actually have a very holistic uh, interaction in regards to the different things that we are involved in our lives, and we just don't even know it."
It's so true. As an occupational therapist, we definitely cover all these dimensions when we're working with people, and it's largely related to their function and their safety, and their things that they need to be able to do every day. But I remember when you first brought this up to me, I thinking like, wait, we do this too, just in a very different capacity, and or like with a very different perspective, right? And I just thought that was so cool that we could both use similar approaches for two very different things, right? Um, and so you created or crafted your unique coaching approach because you've trademarked this and you in alignment with these dimensions. How do you kind of use that then when you're working with somebody? Talk us through your approach that you take. Like, are you throwing this all at them at once? Are you taking them through like a stepwise process one at a time? Or how are you like even, opening up that conversation after you've said like, hey, you're not one person, one dimension, like you are made up of all these dimensions, right? Okay, what now?
Yes, I love this question. Okay, so the programming that is very popular among my clients and is adaptable into different workshop formats that I do for organizations and public speaking as well is called 5 Reps to Wealth, the system for sustainable momentum. And the 5 Reps to Wealth program, if I were working one-on-one with a client, is between 8 to 12 weeks. It depends on how much they want to fast track the program. And what we start out doing is there's an interactive within 5 reps where we break down, okay, these are your dimensions of life that you are engaging with on the daily, whether you like it or not. So, how about we sit down together and we begin to map out what I like to call building their blueprint for wealth? Because a lot of us, especially in this day and age in our culture, we lose sight that we are actually the architects and designers of our life. So when I sit down with a client for this program, it starts out with us sitting down and talking about, okay, where are you at? Where do you think you should be? And what past versions of yourself are holding you to alternative narrative that you really don't want to subscribe yourself to? And we just sit down and have a conversation about that. It starts out with letting the individual, letting the client know that there is space for their story to be heard, And that's something I value so much about therapy is that every person I sit down with is a unique and assertive person in their own way because there's no other person like them on this planet Earth. Like there's only one of you. And so I make sure to sit down and help the client understand that they have a unique story. And with the right guidance through the 5 rep system, they can actually begin to put the the things in place to actually start to gain momentum towards the lifestyle that they want to live that has that holistic abundance where they're finally feeling balanced. They're finally feel like they're pursuing their goals with consistency. And I like to replace the word goals with intention. The 5 rep system allows us to be more intentional in pursuit of an objective so that we're able to just keep going at it in the long run. Because, I mean, life is a marathon, and sometimes we can live by the items that we cross off of our to-do list. So with my clients, what the 5 rep system gets us really good at is figuring out how to what I call microdose momentum. And microdosing momentum is finding the tiniest first step forward so that after we get that momentum going, that's when motivation comes. I can't tell you how many times, Pooja, where I have clients who are like, Jay, I'm just not motivated in this dimension, like for work or for physical, working out or doing whatever you need to do for your health. And I'm like, look, motivation's not going to show up for you. I'm sorry, but also not sorry to tell you that because somebody needs to tell you that you can't just snap your fingers and motivation's going to be there. We need to get really good at microdosing momentum. What's the tiniest first step so that we can really light that fire in self-starting and self-initiation into implementation in pursuit of the wealthy lifestyle that we're seeking to design.
I love all of that so much because you're absolutely right. I had to kind of like directly call out someone the other day, and they were like, "You know what? You're right. Like, thank you for being so direct." And I'm like, "Well, that's my job. Like, I'm not here to sugarcoat things. Like, this is how it is, and this is what you're going to have to do about it, right? And then it's up to you to make that
Mm-hmm.
decision and that call." So I love that you mentioned that. I want to kind of apply this and ask you maybe sort of like, yes, we use similar approaches. So in my practice, so I'm doing care planning, right? I'm working with family caregivers. I'm talking to them about like, what's your plan? What are you going to do? Like, you can't wait for a crisis to happen before you decide, oh my gosh, we need to do all X, Y, and Z because it's going to be extremely overwhelming. And so
Mm-hmm.
uh, we're looking at that, and then also looking at holistic retirement planning because the numbers are showing that mental health is significantly declining as soon as people retire, right? Especially with how long retirement is now for most people. And people didn't plan for that 20, 30, 50 years ago, right? They retired, they lived maybe like 5, 6 years, 10 years at most. And now people are retiring and living a whole life like 20, 30 years after, and they didn't have a plan. And so people need almost, uh, all the different dimensions that you talked about. Like, we incorporate that from an OT perspective too, right? Like your physical health, your social health, your cognitive health, your um, environmental support, like all of that matters when
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about aging in place, long-term care needs, retirement, and all of that. So when you think about that, like everything I just said, when you think about supporting family caregivers and like aging adults today, what do you see as like the single most overlooked need?
Mm. This is a really, really good question, and I'm definitely passionate about this topic. Within geriatric care, family care systems, and just like aging daily, because aging, I do believe that aging is such a gift. I personally love my elders, both family and friends. Like, they have so much to give, and we have so much to give as a community, in regards to where we can support ourselves in every stage of life. Um, identifying the single most thing that's overlooked. I know that a straight answer will come from just sharing what comes up for me as you were articulating that, Pooja. Um, the preventative care side is huge. Um, Not a lot of people think about preventative care when it comes to our money. And really, with preventative care, it's just like, oh, I should be investing, but it's like, okay, investing in what? And that's where it goes back to taking a hard look at the dimensions of wellness. What do you want your life to look like in each dimension in this decade, the next decade, and after that? And that definitely takes a lot of intention being mindful about having a relationship with your future self. So let's go with that. I would say the biggest thing that is in regards to uh, aging gracefully, in regards to your financial stability and overall family systems, would be the lack of relationship with your future self. Man, clients of all ages, honestly, really able to uh, envision what it's like to make decisions in the here and now that actually are in favor of the version of themselves in the future. So that's something that I hope to see more, at least from like people who listen to your show, that are able to witness the types of guests that you bring on and the overall message and culture of uh, platforms like yours that seek to educate and bring forward different perspectives that you can take as an individual and with your family. So, yeah, I would like to see more people have a relationship with their future self because it allows them compassionate ability making decisions for your future self while also maintaining adaptability. Because, yeah, we have to stay adaptable with how life changes over the course of. Can you hear me?
You're back.
Okay.
That was fast.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Oh, yes, absolutely yes. I love how you phrase that. Having a relationship with your future self. I That is a question that I don't exactly phrase that way, and with your permission, I'm going to do that now. Where I'm like,
Take it. Go for it.
how do you like what do you envision? So I get a lot of families who are like, well, we're going to take care of them and we'll figure it out. It's okay. And I'm like, great. Love that for you. What is that going to look like day to day for you? Right? Like, I don't think people
Hmm.
understand how much goes into caring for somebody like you're until they're in it. And at that point, there's so much tunnel vision that people don't always realize that there's so much more to it, right? From a financial standpoint, from a
Hmm.
physical standpoint, from a social standpoint, emotional standpoint, like there's just so much. It's not as easy as saying, yeah, I got them. I'm going to take care of them. That's fine. Like, are you going to have to take leave from work? Are you going to have to quit your job? Are you going to have to like do like a short-term leave? Are you going to have to bring in other
Hmm.
support systems? Are you going to have to move? Like there's so much that goes into this, and I don't think people think about it enough. And I think phrasing it maybe as like, what do you want your future self to look like, or what do you want that to look like, is such a great way of maybe phrasing that versus you don't know what you're going to be walking into. Because I think as humans in today's society, like we're conditioned to be reactive. And so when we're
Hmm.
positioning something as taking like a proactive approach, people don't always register that versus I think what you're saying of like, well, think about invest in your future self. Like think about what you want that to look like. And I wonder if that would maybe set some people up for a better perspective or mindset around that.
I hear you. Yes, and I'm sure in the, with like the direct work that you do around like creating a care plan or it's almost like, at least in financial therapy, some of my colleagues specialize in working with clients who are planning their estate. So like wills, trust, like what's going to be left to, family member after a family member passes away. And sometimes clients want to like be avoidant of it or not fully engage in it because they're like, well, we'll just figure it out like once the issue is here. But as I said before, money is emotions disguised. Unless if we take into account having a relationship with our future self in regards to how we may be emotionally activated during a time of crisis, a time of life transition, or a time of just having to make big decisions around how do we care for an elderly family member, or how do we care for a big change that is happening in the family system. It causes a lot more chaos, and honestly, it makes it a lot more expensive in the long run. And money makes the world go round. Like, I'm sorry, but we all have to interact with money on the daily. Would you rather interact with it in a moment where you're more emotionally regulated and when you can make a decision of how you would want your future self to be able to sit in that scenario or in that situation that you know is coming? Or would you rather just wait and then you have to make a decision emotionally? And like I said, most of the time that ends up being a lot more expensive. So yeah, definitely not saying relationship with future self and fly with it. That has been so beneficial for me in my own life, and I've seen some beautiful change in my clients' lives because in each dimension, depending on where they're at in life or what their goals are, I ask them like, okay, here's your intention, here's the action step. How are we going to format this so it has a relationship with your future self? And when you don't feel like doing something, that's when you ask, is this actually in favor of my future self, or am I just like stockpiling and throwing all the pressure onto that later version of myself? And that, it just doesn't take yourself into consideration. So I'm happy to hear that resonates, and I hope it's effective for you and your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought up that it's been great to see some of that change and benefits to your clients. Can you share a moment, like big or small, when you knew that your approach was really working and making a real difference?
Oh, yes, yes. And I'm sure you can relate as a therapist in your field that there's nothing more validating than seeing um, be struggling in areas. So I have a client, she actually is a victim of the government shutdown. I wonder if victim is the right way, but she is like having the direct consequences of the government shutdown because she does work within the government system. And when she is working, has a lot of financial stability. The areas where she was really struggling in is consumption around food, and then lack of consumption of like physical activity. So like taking care of her health, making sure she would get to the doctor. Along with some of the mentions that were challenged was like environmentally, just not having the energy or the capacity to care for her home the way she wanted to, along with managing some things. So it's been a pretty interesting couple weeks in our sessions, because although she is facing job and income insecurity right now, she did share with me, which was really amazing to hear. Again, despite being in a situation where she could easily, and she told me a past version of herself prior to us working together would be, I'm just going to stick my head in the sand and pretend that the problem isn't really happening, and that's not in favor of a relationship with my future self. And so she mentioned to me in a session earlier this week that she was like, doing on momentum has helped me realize that I can keep going despite having an extreme insecurity in my life right now. Like the way that I'm able to embrace momentum is helping me keep going in small ways so I can still stay present for my daughter. So I can still keep getting in my step goal for the week, and I'm still going to my doctor's appointment even though I don't know what's happening with my job. So that really goes to show that the 5 reps to wealth method, it's not about being perfect in every single dimension, because that's not going to happen and that's not sustainable over a lifetime. But what it is about is understanding the ebb and flow that happens in regards to the dimensions of wellness, the dimensions of life that they're able to engage in. This client usually is doing real well financially, intellectually, and vocationally. And those are the top 3 dimensions in the 5 rep acronym. The ones that are getting neglected are the middle ones: emotional, relational, and environmental. Spiritual on the back burner. But ever since our time working together, she has learned to, as I like to educate my clients, there's a scale of rigidness being on one end, chaos being on the other end. And on the spectrum between rigidity and chaos, in the middle lies adaptability. And exactly where to seek to ride the life with. Um, yeah, I'm just really proud of my client in regards to her adaptability skills, her resilience, and just the way that she knows that she can something better than a past version of herself, which is sometimes all we can ask for.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really sweet.
We're back.
I had a feeling you were going to cut out again because it was starting to get choppy.
Oh, really? It's like little mini commercial breaks.
It's all good. Take a little commercial break. I that's really sweet. Thank you for sharing that. I can't imagine what some of those employees who have been impacted are feeling and navigating, especially the ones who weren't as financially stable before, right? I'm sure
Hmm.
they're really struggling. But you're absolutely right in that you can't you can't prioritize every dimension all the time. Like that's not sustainable. So it's really like
Hmm.
making improvements wherever you can and focusing on the ones that you have energy for, the time for, whatever it is, but it's progress either way, right? So I really like how you brought that up.
Absolutely.
You know, the
Yeah.
work we do, you kind of brought up um you kind of brought it up but you didn't address it in a way of like we take on a lot of these emotional burdens of other people, right? Like we hear their stories and we
Hmm.
kind of take them on to take it off of them. And this is something that we really experienced during the pandemic at a very high level in the hospital, but even in the community and in the clinics and everywhere, that this is a constant thing. Care work, whether it's therapy, whether that's hands on, direct, indirect care, it comes with a lot of hurdles and challenges. What's a common challenge that you face, and how do you navigate that without burning out?
Mm, really good question. I laugh about this because a common challenge I face is making sure that I hold myself accountable to the standard of practicing what I preach, right? Um, I can't be a therapist, I can't be a provider or an advocate for leading yourself, leading myself to living a better life through self-awareness and compassionate accountability without actually practicing that on the daily. So it's sometimes I honestly communicate with others that I find being a therapist, no matter what specific field of therapy you work in, as almost a form of a life hack, because working in a serving profession, we have to stay very adaptable and be active in the ways that we remain lifelong learners of the self. Um, Man, I've gone through so many wonderful transitions and learning curves ever since starting my business, and that's why it's been so important to me and why I created the Five Reps to Wealth method, because I've been in a place where I was really successful on paper, but I was not actually doing well internally in regards to the way that I lived my life. And the way that I summarized that period of time, about, was it 5, 6 years ago, was me being very blessed but still depressed. And it took a lot of hard look inward, look at the way I actually wanted to lead my life, out of that difficult time, to that, okay, it's not a will problem, it's a systems problem. And the systems problem is the system in which my life was on. And it was very one-sided in regards to work and money. So I created the 5 rep system to open up the opportunity for me to understand that I can actually acknowledge that I am engaging with more parts of my life. I am engaged. You got an airplane above you?
It's a helicopter.
Oh, a helicopter. I could barely hear it. I was like, I feel like I'm hearing the same thing. Um, can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, cool. There may be another commercial break here because we're having, for those listening, we're having fun with connection today. But we'll figure it out. All that to say, I moved from being blessed but still depressed to a place of compassionate accountability. And I say compassionate accountability because I grew up as an athlete, so the words like discipline and accountability were, you know, highly valued in the spaces that I interacted with. Um, but it's important for us to acknowledge that sometimes those words like be more disciplined, just be better is actually pretty redundant. But if we can hold ourselves compassionately accountable to understanding what our capacity is to engage with certain elements of life, it's just been so much in favor of my ability to maintain longevity. So, in full circle to answer your question, I would say learning how to on capacity and acknowledge the small wins are two things that I'm still actively working on. I utilize the 5 rep system to help maintain my lifestyle through that.
Yeah, what you said about when people say like just be better or whatever, like it's not just redundant, it's not helpful. Like if you're in a place where you don't feel well, but like on the exterior everyone's like, "Oh, you're crushing it." Like that's not helpful at all. Of
Hmm.
what, and it's like yeah, and I can 100% relate with you on, that whole situation of like blessed but depressed. Like you could look fantastic on paper and everyone's like, "Oh, you're doing
Right.
great." And then all of a sudden it's like, but like you don't feel great, right? And that that
Hmm.
that is hard, like to acknowledge it and then do something about it when you're in it. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that. Um, Along those lines, I think a lot of times our audience members feel stuck at the I don't know where to start stage, like whatever it is, whether it's their health, whether it's financial, whether it's care planning, whether it's thinking about their parents who are not doing well, right? That denial, lack of acceptance, avoidance, all of that. What is the first step that you would recommend from your perspective as a therapist? Maybe not even just financially, but all over. What do you think the first step can be that they can take like today or tomorrow morning?
Ooh, I love this question. Before I answer it, I just want to make sure, can you still hear me? Because it's asking me to reconnect.
I can still hear you.
Okay, if you can hear me, I'm not going to mess with it. So the first step that someone could take, a current client, potential client, if you are feeling stuck in regards to the next step you need to take with whatever you're facing, I would start with helping you understand, and you can even write this out on a piece of paper just to help relieve it from everything that we're storing inside. Like anyone listening, you have a brilliant mind and you are more capable than what you give yourself credit for. However, I offer you and invite you to stop pressuring yourself to organize and maintain and just try to get everything sorted out in your head. Like you got to be able to get it out, whether that's talking with someone you trust, consulting with a professional, or just getting it out on a piece of paper. Okay, so start there. How do I find a way to relieve the pressure of doing this internally? And what I really want to make sure that we understand is that when you're having a feeling of stuckness or a feeling of anxiety, avoidance, doubt, etc., understand that feelings are the product of emotions mixed with experiences. So I'll say that
Say
again.
that
If we were to
again.
look it up, like, yeah, I got you. I got you. Feelings are the product of emotions mixed with experiences. So if we were to write it out on a piece of paper, it would look like emotions plus experiences equal feelings. Okay? Emotions actually only last an average of maybe 90 seconds. So you could have an emotion, you could feel sad, and then you could feel angry, and then you could feel scared, and then you could, those are what those emotions are. Like they cycle and sometimes they repeat and reinforce themselves, and often those emotions are triggered by an experience. Now, when those two things are mixing repetitively, so let's go with the example you gave about a client feeling stuck about a decision in regards to how to navigate the long-term care for an elderly loved one. They're having these emotions of I hate seeing my family member age like this. I'm really worried about them. I'm anxious I'm going to make the wrong choice. Maybe I'm angry because I have siblings or other family members not stepping up how I really need them to. So you have, anxiety, avoidance, worry, anger. You have all those emotions that are cycling at a rate of about 90 seconds all at the same time, mixed with repeated experiences of having to make certain decisions for long-term care. Maybe they haven't taken that step to uh, interact with you and your business yet, Pooja, to help get that guidance. Maybe they're taking it on alone. Maybe their family member has Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia settling in, so they also can't consult the family member about what the best decisions would be. So there's all these emotions mixed with these repeated experiences, and that is what equals those feelings of stuckness, that feeling of resentment that is creeping in and is starting to increase, but you're not able to understand the cycle in which those emotions and experiences are reinforcing those really heavy feelings. So um, I would say start out with understanding your equation. What is stacking up to leading me to this feeling of stuckness? Because once we can actually identify the factors that are uh, negatively reinforcing a pattern, that's where we can actually step in together to put those roadblocks in to just pivot in a healthy way.
I love how you broke that down because I obviously learned this in school and I don't. I also teach a lecture on emotions and have never been able to phrase it like that. And that is genius because I think people can understand exactly how what's leading to their feelings of guilt or resentment or whatever it might be. Because those are the two that I deal with the most, right? A lot of family caregivers,
Mm,
especially after their loved one has passed, there's a lot of feelings of guilt and resentment. And it's because of these long term exposures to decision making and caregiving and just loss of their lives and, loss of whatever they thought they would have done during that time. Right. And we talk
Mhm.
through that, but it takes a long time for them to understand like why they're feeling that way and then to be able to move past it. Right. And I think understanding that it stems from the mix of emotions and experiences is brilliant. I think that that's like probably the easiest way a non provider could understand that. And so that's great. So repeating it for the audience members who may have
Amen.
already forgotten it, emotions plus experiences equal feelings. That's great.
You got
I
it.
think that was
You
already
got
a
it. One other thing I
pretty,
want to,
yeah, go for it.
oh, go ahead. Well, I just wanted to add on one more thing. When you brought up like the main two feelings, like the, resentment. What'd you say it was resentment and
Guilt.
guilt or
Guilt.
yep. Yeah. So those two feelings being the most common, I'm excited for you and I can't wait for you to update in regards to how you've been able to just help clients better understand themselves. And it makes me think of a client I actually have right now. She is caring for an elderly parent and is stressed. Like stressed. I have so many appointments I gotta drive her to, and she's just getting more and more short with me because like she does have onset of dementia and things like that. And we know that the her mother's time is soon coming for her to just move on to the next life or whatever their beliefs are. And my client also has anxiety about that, feelings of stuckness of, well, I've been operating as a caregiver for so long, I almost don't even know what I'm going to do with myself once my family
Mhm.
member passes. So we've been working on projected like 5 reps plans of, okay, what do you envision for yourself in a life where your family member has passed away and now you get to figure out and navigate those feelings of anxiety, guilt, and resentment that are still there even after the family member passes. How do we make sure that your dimensions of wellness, your dimensions of wealth are in place so that you have the space to grieve and to remember
Mhm.
your loved one? We don't give ourselves enough space to just really like feel and acknowledge that it's okay to be where you're at. But there are ways in which you can seek to understand and that you can seek to have that relationship with your future self through methods like what you and I use as providers. So I hope that this episode just helped offer people some nuggets of wisdom that they can, move forward with in a way that's healthy for their entire family system.
Yes, and that's exactly why we also run our grief education and support programs to help transition role transitions, right? Transitioning from caregiving to what that post caregiver life looks like, right? A lot of people, some people may have had short term roles, right? Where they're like, oh, we were caregiving for mom for 2 years and, that was it. They were able to go back to their job, they were able to get back into the groove of things.
Hmm.
But then generally, we see this a lot with our dementia and Alzheimer's families where they were caregiving for 10, 15, 20 years and they don't know anything outside of that anymore. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they like. They don't know. If they want to go back to work, the work industry has changed a lot in 10, 15, 20 years, right? And so they struggle with figuring out, what do I do now? What's next? What do I do? And it's incredibly important to have support systems in place and providers, professionals like you and I in place to help them navigate that so that they're not trying to figure that out on their own.
I couldn't agree more. Let me know if you need any 5 reps plugins for your program.
Absolutely, will do. I think you already shared a ton of practical tools from your 5 reps plans to the equation. But what is one like resource, tech tip, or mindset shift that you wish caregivers or like just people in general had or knew about when it comes to dimensional wealth or wellness?
Mm. Oh, this is a really good question. Look at you. I love your questions. Um,
I'm glad.
I am such a nerd for lifelong learning, so again, picking one resource is pretty tough. But for this one, I actually will direct listeners to my website. It's jaevic.com, jaevic.com. There's a resources tab with free downloads where I have a series of different downloadable worksheets to help you understand things such as the feelings equation, but the one that I specifically want to point to is the limiting beliefs document. A limiting belief is a negative belief. It's those impulsive thoughts that come to mind about who we are or the situation that we're facing. So, in the context of some of your audience, it could be, I'm not doing enough, or I should be doing more. There's a lot of should statements in there, like I should be this. Why am I not this? Why are things this way? Um, it's it's really like the way that I describe limiting beliefs is kind of like if there was a gnat in your face. We've all had like a bug that's like just kind of stalking us, and we're like, I just want to get you out of my face, but I can't seem to squash you. Limiting beliefs are those negative thoughts that kind of like float around in the background, but actually are draining our energy. And I want to direct listeners to that resource on my website because what it actually does is helps you understand the value that lies within your limiting belief. I have so many clients that I've done some phenomenal work with around understanding that our negative thoughts actually are very important because they tell us what we care about most. It's not about just telling ourselves like saying that stuff, thinking that way. It's about observing, not absorbing that negative thought so we can observe it for what is it actually trying to tell me that I care about rather than it trying to make me believe that I am that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's great. And I love that you have those free resources on your website for them to access. We're seeing a lot of change overall when it comes to supporting and promoting health and wellness across the board. I mean, it's way more than was available when we were growing up, that people have access to now. What do you like looking ahead to the next 5 years? What emerging trend excites you the most, and how can our listeners prepare to leverage that to for holistic health and wellness?
Mm, this is a really good question. The emerging trend. The emerging trend, I would say I'm excited to see become more prevalent and prioritized is the concept of wealth, honestly. Um, we are moving into a time, at least in our country, where people are feeling like they need to take circumstances into their own hands in a way. And I definitely advise doing this in a healthy way that not only prioritizes your own well-being and capacity, but make sure that it gives back to your community because as human beings, like we need our community, we need our tribe to survive. I mean that's one of the basics of human survival is surviving in numbers, right? So we do need each other. But what I say in regards to taking things into our own hands, at least in regards to wealth, is a rising number of people seeking to challenge some of those traditional ideals as to the American dream. Everything you're supposed to do on paper to get everything right so that, once retirement comes, then we're just happy and everything's great. But we're starting to realize, like, okay, wait, the storybook written path of the narrative I'm supposed to follow is not actually what is accessible, realistic, or really what I want, right? Um, so I would say the trend of seeking to design your own life and being okay with that being a little bit different from the person next to you is a trend that is going, and I look forward to uh, interacting with more courageous people who are ready to take that on.
Yeah, that's exciting. Before we wrap, because we are past the top of the hour, what's one takeaway you hope every viewer walks away with after hearing about what you do today?
Oh, I love this question. And I love the resilience of this podcast. I hope everyone listening knows that we worked very hard to make sure that this conversation happened. Um, so the one takeaway, man, okay. I would say one takeaway that I'll just leave it at this is to remember to build your wealth with wellness because it's not if you achieve it, it's how you achieve it.
That's great. I love that. Jay, thank you so much for being here. And even though we're both not at home and there were lots of technical challenges, we made it happen. And so thank you so much for being here today.
Of course, it was quirky, quirky tech challenges. Thank you for having me, and
It just
I look
came with
forward
some,
to talking again soon.
yeah, it just came with some commercial breaks this time. It's all good.
Yes, yes,
Um,
thank you.
for yeah, you're welcome. For those listening in, that is jaevic.com to access Jaelyn's website and her services. And thank you for tuning in today. We'll be back with another live stream in 2 weeks, and we'll see you then.